been quite a bit. Our research, our project has some different layers and depths concerning language, languaging gestures, and play in bilingual elementary classrooms. This is part of Lindsay's honors thesis project. And so she's going to take you through some of the samples of the work that we're looking at. I will jump in a few slides, but mainly Lindsay will be presenting today. Oh, yeah, well, the next slide. So we'll try and give some details, right, concerning introduction and a little bit about theory. I'll talk a little bit more about methods that we're using, but Lindsay will cover the regular parts of the study.
Good morning, everyone. So with this study, as you saw, we're aiming to merge several different areas of research, including second language learning, languaging gestures, play pedagogy, and teacher perceptions of play, all to investigate daily teaching practices in an early elementary bilingual setting. And so the reason we want to look at all of these areas together is several. First, high stakes testing in the United States has led to a reduced importance given to play. And when play is included in an everyday schedule, it's often left to be entirely child-directed or teacher-directed with no in-between. And teacher involvement with students when languaging and with play together can lead to a bunch of growth through the creation of a new mediational space, but can also be very contingent on cooperation with a joint effort between teachers and students. And this is limited severely because of this high stakes testing, but also we've seen limited classroom talk patterns, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. And finally, there's also a need for more studies documenting play in an elementary bilingual context. So to give you some background on all of these big topics and areas of research, play improves executive functions like self-regulation, it pushes social development, supports emergent literacy, advanced literacy, and math skills when used in early childhood pedagogy. And when playing, as we heard about in previous presentation, children engage in these struggles of power, these issues of power. They engage in social negotiation, advocating for themselves and others as they navigate their world and new concepts. And when playing, children create and inhabit roles that they perceive as powerful, while addressing different social challenges that they face through play and in play. And in play, they take mediated action to connect with others, direct others, as well as meet their own needs. And this is just play in general. And with teachers we've seen in research tend to position themselves outside of children's play, interact parallelly, or intervene in children's play, or interrupt it due to behavior concerns or in an effort to control the play. And these interventions can remove children from the imagined storyline, constructs, or interactions that they're involved in, which can move them to a place of social disadvantage in the classroom. But teacher collaboration doesn't always have to be negative or intervention. It can also be positive, as mentioned earlier, if there's a joint cooperation effort, creating an emotionally safe space for imaginative exploration, and involve the teacher in the process of social negotiation to create benefits for the students. And for second language learners specifically, these students make very intentional language choices in the classroom, and they use their knowledge of dynamics in the classroom and expectations to influence the way that their peers and teachers see them, with the goal of being considered competent members of the peer and classroom community. Translanguaging can support these students in using their agency to provide an avenue for engagement with their peers and with teachers. And when playing, they can take on the roles of competent learners in literacy and mathematics, and allows them also, with the new literacy of technology in digital forms of play, to do this as well. And technology is also a literacy that can bridge home and school, which increases access to learning for all. So in conclusion, basically, with all of this, issues of power and learning are addressed in play. Now for this study specifically, the theoretical framework which we were using is Vygotsky's sociocultural theory. And in this theory, children use tools and activities to act on the world, with language being the most key and important mediational tool, and the quality of the student-teacher relationship being key to this mediational learning. And learning occurs as students use language and these other tools to map concepts onto their experiences alongside the teacher in a forward-oriented process through dynamic interaction, involving forms of play. Now, In sociocultural theory, Vygotsky defined play as creating a space for imagination, leading to the stretching of knowledge for it to be internalized. And within this space or zone of proximal development, a live action text with roles that are created is sustained or played as children collaborate with each other and coordinate the use of different mediational tools. And this live action text created in play depends on shared meaning between the players, and it's renegotiated and improvised as it is performed. And language itself is embodied, and languaging is used in play to establish a shared mode of acting. Now, languaging in second language learning is the coordinated sociocognitive activity of making meaning and shaping knowledge and experience, leading to growth and development. And children use a bunch of modalities in order to do this. They use oral language, gaze, imagery, print, gestures, manipulation, actions, and body movement. And second language learners also have another modality of translanguaging that they all use in order to play and learn. And in order to continue this live action text to sustain this and play, various modalities are needed, especially for second language learners. However, problematically, second language learning, languaging, is usually only considered to take place in writing and speech modalities. And we found this in this scoping review of 27 peer review articles of languaging studies in second language acquisition. So we were hoping to take a more expansive view of second language languaging. And Dr. Rosborough and I are trying to define languaging gestures as gestures that initiate or extend languaging moments to support moments of mediational learning. And the body, as a language tool, mediates the relationship between a physical place or an object and the meaning and relationship with languaging gestures. And these gestures allow for maintenance, monitoring, and contingent exploration of the live action text created in play. So playful acts are not only sustained, but they're constructed, and they're also framed through languaging and languaging gestures. Finally, one more part we need to go over for our literature review is language play. And the general perspective of language play and second language acquisition is that there are two forms. There is ludic and there's serious language play. And the serious language play has been defined traditionally as exercise without enjoyment, or rehearsing rehearsing novel forms in the second language for mastery purposes. Whereas ludic is known as language for pleasure, using well-known forms or meanings. And usually it's seen with accompanying laughter or spontaneity. And also in second language acquisition, though, generally, there is a recognition that there could be a potential blurred divide between these two. It's not just cut and dry. Whereas ludic language can serve to highlight lexical items for focus, meaning it can be purposeful, not just for pleasure. And from a sociocultural perspective, play is not simply for pleasure, as it has purpose and propels growth, and language play is seen as fundamental, developmentally appropriate, and an activity in which students can split the word from the referent to explore sign and symbolism. There's also a focus on student agency and creativity and imagination, and multimodal communication and meaning making are an important part of both play and languaging. So for our research, the problem statement, since there are opportunities for languaging play, and initiating play is limited, our problem statement is that classroom curriculums and lesson plans can't prepare teachers for these emerging opportunities of play that spring up organically, of play, languaging, and language play. As often, classroom talk can focus on only simple, structured exchanges of interaction, like what is found in the initiate-response evaluation discourse. So our research question is, how do multimodalities and play between early childhood educators and multilingual learners of English lead towards these extended languaging opportunities in elementary bilingual classrooms in the United States?
So we brought some recorded video data here to share with you. We've been looking at a few different classrooms in the Western and Southwest United States. These clips for this presentation come from a second grade integrated ESL classroom of children, mainly Spanish speakers, but also Bengali, Tagalog, and Arabic. Coding and analysis for language gestures, we don't put a slide of it, but we're using a simplified version of David McNeil's gesture codes. Yeah, and so here we were also then adding not just to code the gestures, but looking at what Lindsay was talking about, this idea that the embodiment between the teachers and the students, and the knowledge through this embodiment of different modalities can provide this movement, can provide a certain like opening of windows of understanding towards each other. And so that's what we're talking about as forward gesturing. You can look at Streak's work that talks about that. Contingency of prolepsis, McCafferty's done some work in that area, right? And then David McNeil, Vygotsky, Swain also talk about this growth, right? This enhancement, dynamism that can open up new ideas between the participants, and that can often be led through physical embodiment.
So we are going to show you a couple of clips from our data, as was mentioned, and these clips are specifically from a day of footage during a 4-week science unit about insects in a sheltered classroom for English learners in 2nd grade. The languages that these students speak were mentioned, and there are 19 students in this class, with a teaching English to speakers of other languages endorsed teacher with 18 years of experience in an inner city urban setting in the United States. So in our first clip, you will see the screen looks like this, and this first clip takes place in a whole class share regarding the experience of observing mealworms, a type of insect, and they're sharing words to describe these insects. And you'll see in this clip with these 3 students, 3 different examples of language play and languaging gestures that work in tandem. So the first student in the green hoodie, he shows the path of a mealworm on his hand, and it uses his hands in a very interesting way, you'll see. The boy in the middle who's raising his hand, he says something about police, and so very much working on language play there. And the girls in the back, they will be a bit harder to see, but they are holding an imaginary mealworm in their hands. Shaking his recreating this experience and making sense of it through gesture, taking the vocabulary word offered by the teacher, curved, and incorporating it into the gesture, curving his hand, but also was cut short in his explanation at the very end. The student that came after, the one in the middle raising his hand, built on this movement description from the first student and took the teacher's use of the less commonly heard form of the word escape in order to create this connection, extending that teacher language in order to make a joke that made a connection to his life, but also drew in his peers. This exploration was also sadly not continued, and you could see perhaps in the back as this girl in the white shirt watched the boy from the beginning making this gesture, and the next boy raising his hand, talking about the speed of the insect, tracing out a path quickly and holding out her palm, staring at it, then showing her palm to a classmate sitting next to her, both moving their hands and fingers and looking at their palms as if they had a mealworm there. So they were engaged in sense making, but were also interrupted in this moment. I don't believe that we have time for this next clip, but across these different clips and across the data that we've looked at so far, we've seen themes of teachers overlooking, not attending to, or not noticing student play invitations, especially when they're communicated through gesture or other embodied messages. In terms of language play and languaging gestures, teachers can allow space for these through the structure of questioning. Teachers also can interrupt or act in parallel to the play, as seen in the literature review, steering the direction of the play or the direction of interaction in the classroom with academic content agenda. And this shows the teacher's agency. And in this clip we saw, well, in a clip that we would have seen, the teacher takes the perspective of language play as ludic, to be managed, saying, I'm not okay with this. But we also saw some of this in the clip that we just viewed, interrupting the 2 girls in the back as they were seen as just playing rather than making sense of the experience that they just had. With language play and languaging gestures on the student side, students definitely play with each other's ideas and build on each other's ideas. We saw the sustaining of that live action text in that clip. And students embodied creating and imagining through multimodalities of language play helps them to communicate these experiences. Extending languaging can take place through a play frame with or without teacher prompting and interference. But the teacher's own position of power and the way that the teacher exerts the control over a class can create openings or shut down languaging. And students either imitate or build on each other's language play. And second language learning students use languaging gestures to communicate knowledge and authority on a subject, which can allow for respect from peers and reinforce their status as a competent learner in the classroom. So overall, through this study of multimodalities and play, focusing on languaging with a sociocultural lens, language play is shown to be communicated not just through verbal or written modalities, but also languaging gesture as another vital modality through which students communicate meaning by creating these spaces in which development can occur. It also highlights the creativity of students in second language learning, their creativity, but also their agency, which they exercise, and also demonstrates how a teacher's exercise of power can contribute or take from extended languaging opportunities with or between students. So the implications that we have, first for educators, students need the chance to play through ideas with each other, and an educator's questioning patterns can influence a student's ability to explore and sustain this exploration. Language play and languaging gestures in the classroom discourse can be viewed as openings towards extended and mediated languaging. So they need to have this space to occur and need to be seen as valid forms of communication in the class. And play in all of its forms allow for identity affirmation and balancing power in the classroom, which is mediated by embodied or multimodal language. And then finally, implications for future research is that there should be a consideration for embodiment and gesture beyond speech and writing as a modality in second language acquisition. And that investigation is needed for how educators can create these language openings or opportunities within the standard scripts and prescription curriculums, and how teachers can potentially create space for these opportunities and to recognize embodied messages over the need to prioritize pacing in order to get through content. So thank you.